Hi, I'm Michael Fagan, the fitness guru, and this is A Healthy Pause. A lot of New Yorkers always ask themselves the question, am I fat? And that is a really relative question, but everybody looks in the mirror, everybody makes some sort of judgment about themselves, and the question they all ask themselves is, am I fat? You won't ask it to other people. That's kind of like saying, do I look fat in this? Which is one of those questions that I always see along the lines of, taste this milk, I think it's spoiled. There's just no right answer for it. I got an email a couple of weeks ago from a good friend of mine. He'd gone off to Colorado for a big ski trip. He was really excited. He was getting his health and fitness life in order, and he was excited for a couple of weeks on the slopes, exercising every day, fresh air. He was going to feel great about it. Somewhere along the way, he got sidetracked, and he decided to get his body composition tested. Body composition tests will show you what percentage of your body weight is actually fat, as opposed to muscle or bone. So he got this test and he wrote me in a panic because the test came back and it showed that he had 30% body fat. 30% is that magic number where you move from overweight to obese. So he was labeled as obese, he was panicked, terrified, he didn't know what to do, he thought he'd been doing everything right. All of a sudden this guy who was so excited about getting his life together felt completely dejected. He didn't know what he was going to do. So he wrote to me, the fitness guru. I asked him a few questions. First of all, I tried to bring him back in off the ledge. Once I got him in, asked him a few questions about the nature of the testing. Now, there are lots of different tests for body fat composition. The first and most simple is something called the body mass index. It's where you take your height and your weight, and the relative ratio of those two comes up as a number. This is applied in many different circumstances, and it's really, really faulty because if you have a high percentage of muscle, which weighs more than fat, this number doesn't take that into account. So I personally end up close to obese because I happen to be slightly muscular. And relative to my height, it comes across as a very high number. So you can't take the BMI into account when you're trying to figure out what your composition is. All right, next up is fat calipers. You've probably seen these if you've been in the health club. A lot of trainers use them. They're like little pinchers. And what the trainers will do is find various skin folds. They'll measure those skin folds and then they run it through a table. And when they combine all those numbers, they're able to figure out what your percentage is. It's not a bad way of figuring out your body composition. However, it does rely very heavily on the experience of the individual doing the test. So if you find somebody who's not used to using the calipers, or they're very tentative or cautious with using them, they're not quite sure what they're doing, they run the numbers poorly, you're going to end up with a percentage that could be very off. Could make you really happy, could be really low, but it could be really high. And that's a psychological problem because, again, you're going to feel very let down. What my friend in Colorado did was this. He did something called bioelectrical impedance. This is where the trainer or the individual conducting the test will attach electrodes to various parts of your body, run a very, very small electrical current through it, and then run those numbers through a computer. Now, what it does is it measures how quickly the current runs through your body. And depending on your fat percentage, the speed will be greater or lesser. Again, the problem with this test is it depends on the person who's conducting the test. It depends on where they place the electrodes, how they run the numbers. It also depends on your physical condition at that moment. If you're slightly dehydrated, the numbers are going to come out all sorts of wrong. And again, you just leave the place dejected like my friend. So I talked him in. I said, listen, there is only one real good way of finding out your body fat percentage, and that's something called hydrostatic analysis. Hydrostatic analysis is where the person who's giving the test will weigh you, and then they'll submerge you in a giant tank of water and weigh you again, and the difference between the two, your fat's going to float in the water, so it's not going to come out in the final product. That's how you can find your body fat percentage. The problem with that is these tanks are relatively expensive and they're very scarce. And once you do find a place that will do it, the test itself is going to be very expensive. So I don't know if it's really worth the time or the energy. The best way of figuring out your body fat percentage or your body composition is this. Your genes. All right, we all have that pair of jeans that we feel very, very comfortable in. Mine are Banana Republic 33 waist. If I put on these jeans and they're feeling a little snug, a little tight, I know I've probably been a little lax in terms of what I've been doing, maybe eating a couple of the wrong things, not exercising as much as I should. If they're very, very loose and kind of falling off, I know, again, Maybe I'm not eating as much as I should. Maybe I'm not taking care of myself the way I should. I'm not talking about the skinny jeans, the ones you use for that, perfection moment you're going to have where you're finally going to be some, crazy mythical size that you dream about. I'm talking about the really practical jeans that you feel comfortable in. Jeans are a great way of doing it. Don't do it in a bathing suit, because you're going to be very judgmental. Don't do it in front of the mirror. Just put on the jeans. You can get a good sense of it. Now, in terms of your body fat percentage, we all know that there's maybe some weight we have to lose, but if you're living a healthy lifestyle, if you're exercising and you're eating right, your body's going to balance out to the right weight. Exercise alone isn't going to do it. I have a client, for the sake of the conversation, we'll call him Ed. Ed worked out like a fiend for a couple of years. I did everything right. Exercised 4 or 5 times a week. He wore a heart monitor. He was very intelligent with the way that he worked out, but he kept a lot of weight around his midsection. He was nowhere near obese. He was slightly overweight and he couldn't lose it. When I was finally able to convince him to start eating healthy and change the way he eats, all of a sudden that belly came off. Just came off because his life was in balance, his body got into balance, he had a nice sort of balance. Body composition doesn't really mean anything. Your body fat percentage, it's a great cocktail party conversation, but at the end of the day, as we here in the Republic of Brooklyn like to say, forget about it. It's not important, all right? What's important is the healthy lifestyle. Once you have the healthy lifestyle, you're eating right, you're eating clean, you're exercising regularly, your body is going to come into a great state of balance. So how are you going to exercise? How are you going to eat properly? That's a 4-hour video into itself. Until I cut that video, what I suggest is you go to my website, fitnessgurunyc.com, check out all the tips, all the suggestions, all the great recipes. If you have any questions for me about body composition, about losing weight, about anything fitness related at all, shoot me an email at michael@fitnessgurunyc.com. I'm Michael Fagan, the Fitness Guru. This has been A Healthy Pause. Come back and check it out again real soon.